Drake and Josh was impossible to escape in the mid-2000s, and almost anyone growing up during that time has more than likely seen an episode or two at least. And whenever I think about the show, my mind always wanders to the first special, Drake and Josh Goes Hollywood. To my dismay, it's been 18 years since the special actually came out, so I decided it was time for a rewatch to see if Drake and Josh Goes Hollywood is really worth remembering. The movie starts with Megan cutting some fruit, as you do, and Josh comes in to tell her all about getting accepted into a creative writing program. And this is where I first noticed that there is no laugh track. I completely forgot that detail from when I watched this as a kid. I think it's kind of fun. I kind of love it. It makes some of the jokes a little bit funnier because the awkward silence after a crazy body movement or saying some crazy phrase, it's kind of just makes it a little bit funnier. I don't know. Megan actually turns on a blender to drown out Josh while he's trying to tell her all excitedly about his creative writing program. She's a straight savage. There's no other way to put it. Josh figures out he isn't wanted in the kitchen and runs off to find his parents to annoy them with the creative writing program bullshit. He says that his assignment is to write about his greatest adventure ever, and then Josh's parents just completely ignore him to tell him that they're leaving on a 10-day cruise. And the wife doesn't even want to go on a cruise. How ungrateful. Or perhaps, to play devil's advocate, I guess the husband should have picked a more proper vacation that would have made the wife happy. Josh goes to find Drake in their room, and he has some wild amp that creates an instant laser show whenever he plays guitar. 100% not safe to use without safety goggles. He almost blinded both of them right there, right then. It would have been over. Josh is actually into it while Drake's getting dirty with the guitar, and Drake ends up getting a call from his band manager. He tells Drake his gig for the night got canceled, so he books them another show that ends up being at a retirement home. And while they are there, one of the old people calls Drake a communist, which maybe he's on to something. Drake, maybe he's a communist. I don't know. Someone should look into that. Meanwhile, Josh is trying to write about his greatest adventure ever and realizes he's never done anything interesting with his life. You know what, Josh? I'm with you. Back at the retirement home, Drake actually pulls out the laser amp as if that's going to be a hit with the old people, and they all start having Vietnam flashbacks. They all start rioting. It's not a hit with the guests. During all this, Josh still can't come up with an idea for his paper after 2 hours, and Megan starts to finally hassle him. She says she's taking Drake's suitcase for a trip to Colorado that she's going on to visit her friend. And before leaving, Josh asks Megan if he's boring, and she's gone before he's even finished asking the question because she got bored. There you have it, Josh. Drake gets back home and is obviously upset about how the show went, so Josh has the idea that he should be Drake's new band manager and then hassles Drake until he says yes. Josh then tells Drake he's never had a really great adventure in his life, and Drake's asleep before Josh can even finish his sentence. No one in this family actually cares about Josh at all. Megan, Drake, and his parents all ignored him when he just wanted to brag about his writing class. What the hell? Later on, Josh is busy calling record labels to get Drake a band deal, and their parents are leaving for the cruise. The parents tell Drake and Josh that Megan's flight leaves in 2 hours and they have to take her to the airport. If it leaves in 2 hours, I mean, I might be a noob, but I would probably be at the airport already. At the very least, I'd be out the door. That's pretty ballsy. But I guess I'm forgetting that Megan is a straight savage, so she'll get to the airport whenever she fucking likes. Drake then leaves to get a corn dog, and it takes him over an hour to get back somehow. Megan's plane leaves in 45 minutes, and Josh didn't have a car to take her himself, so they rush to the airport, and Drake almost kills them on the way there looking at a video of himself performing. That's ridiculous. Megan also finds a dead bird in the back of his car, and Drake casually brushes it off as his pet bird. Wouldn't he be more upset about his pet bird being dead? What the hell? And then Josh finds his old Geo under all of Drake's trash, which a Geo seems to be an iPod in this world. And Drake's car is just a treasure trove of shit. I can't believe how much stuff he has in there. Now that I'm thinking about it, that bird should have been smelling. I mean, what the hell? They end up making it to the airport, and Megan asks Josh to hold her phone, which he puts it in his pocket instantly and never gives it back. He doesn't even pretend to just hold it for a second. He instantly puts it into his pocket. She gets on the plane, and they wait for her flight to take off. Josh then sees a news news report that a money printing machine was stolen from Washington, D.C. An airport patron overhears the boys talking and tells them that the flight Megan just got on is going to LA, not Colorado. How would they let her on the flight with the wrong ticket? This is after 9/11. The airport staff should have scanned the ticket, read the ticket, looked at the ticket, and saw that it was for a Colorado flight and not let her get on the LA flight. She shouldn't even have a seat on that flight. How did they let her go on? The boys start freaking out and beg them to stop the plane, and of course they say no. So the boys try being terrorists for a little bit, and they try rushing the airport doors and running onto the plane while it's pulling away from the hallway. That would instantly get you on the no-fly list. Guaranteed. Security shows up and puts Drake and Josh in their place by giving them a thorough strip search. But they're not kicked out of the actual airport at all. They're allowed to turn around and just book another flight. Why wouldn't security escort them off the premises? They tried to rush a moving plane. Meanwhile, Megan realizes she's going to LA and is instantly annoyed with her brothers, which I would be too. The boys decide to try calling Megan and realize Josh still has her phone in his pocket, and they bicker back and forth for a while about who's the stupidest brother. They end up booking a flight to LA to get Megan. 1. They shouldn't be able to book a flight. 2. Drake has a car. It's a 2-hour 20-minute drive from San Diego to LA. They could have met Megan at the airport before she even landed and deboarded and got her bags. Megan lands and asks an airport worker to get put on a flight to Denver and is told there's storms, so all flights to Denver are canceled. The worker helps Megan order a limousine and find a hotel room for the night. Meanwhile, Drake and Josh are flying to LA to get Megan, and Josh is sick and tired of his terrible row neighbors who are kind of overweight, messy Americans. He switches seats next to an inconspicuous man using a geo that looks like his. But when he's looking at the geo, all you see is weird imagery of money. Pretty sus. Josh tries to make small talk with the guy, and he's obviously not having it. Josh tries showing the guy his geo, and the guy basically tells him to shut the fuck up with his body language. And then they rest their identical geos next to each other on the armrest. What do you think will happen next? I want you to take a wild guess. A. Josh will get off the plane holding his own geo. B. Josh will be... Just forget it. You know what's gonna happen. The fat lady from before falls on top of Josh and the inconspicuous man, and they swap geos in the mess. Of course they do. That was gonna be option B. Megan meets up with her limo driver and asks him to take her to the best hotel in LA, and she leaves literally just as the boys deboard the plane. They can't call Megan. I wonder whose fault that is, so they decide to wait at the airport for her to call them. They're worried sick about her as she's touring LA, living her best life. As she should be. Megan ends up renting out the penthouse with no grown-up's signature or anything at all. I still get carded. You have to be 26 around here to rent a hotel room. I don't know how she got that room. Drake and Josh are still waiting around the airport like a couple of suckers, and she finally calls them. They find out where she's staying and tell her to stay there, and they're on the way to get her. Josh then asks the inconspicuous guy from the airplane for directions to the hotel, and they run off. Meanwhile, the man meets another inconspicuous man in a weird hat this time, and he asks for the geo. The new guy is looking at it and asks, "Who the hell is Josh Nichols?" As you can guess, the initial inconspicuous man is not impressed. But lucky for them, Josh just told them exactly where they're going, and now they have his full name as well. So of course, the criminals head out after Drake and Josh to get their geo back. The boys make it to the hotel, and Josh runs off to pee, and Drake goes to the room to find Megan. And Tony Hawk pulls up to check into the hotel as well. What a random cameo, but I can't say I hate it. While Josh is peeing in the public bathroom because he couldn't wait 5 seconds to go pee in the hotel room, he hears a guy complaining that his music act just failed at the last minute for a massive show. He pulls out his laptop and hassles the man in the bathroom with a video of Drake performing. Josh slides it under the stall while the man is going to the bathroom. This has to be some form of assault. This is unacceptable behavior. But apparently the producer doesn't find it unacceptable at all because he is impressed, but he was supposed to have an A-lister act, and Drake is unknown. Josh somehow talks him into giving Drake a chance, and the show goes live at 5:30 p.m. a.m. tomorrow. Cut to Josh telling Drake the news in the hotel room, and Megan leaves to go to the pool, and the boys decide to listen to Drake's songs one by one on Josh's Geo to see which song is the best, so they can choose it for the performance tomorrow. When Josh goes to plug his Geo into the computer, he realizes his Clay Aiken playlist is gone. His computer instantly gets a program from the United States Treasury Department, and high-res graphics of $100 bills start displaying on his laptop. That's not good, Josh. You gotta ditch that thing. Before Drake and Josh can even really comprehend what's going on, the criminals break into their hotel room and catch them in the act. They demand them to give over the Geo, but Josh refuses because he knows they're up to no good. Josh, what are you doing? Do you want a bullet in the head? What are you doing? The criminals eventually get the Geo somehow, but Drake and Josh start fighting with them and steal the Geo back and run away. They end up stealing Tony Hawk's car and get into a high-speed chase, which Drake is driving stick shift perfectly. He's handling this really powerful car really well, but he almost killed them on the way to the airport in his shitty automatic car. He could barely drive that car. As they're driving away from the criminals, Drake is actually pissed at Josh for taking the Geo back in the first place. He wanted to be done with all this criminal shit, and now they're gonna follow them until they're presumably murdered so they can get this Geo back, all because of Josh being a goody two-shoes. Meanwhile, Megan is back at the hotel room and notices the room is trashed. She can't find Drake and Josh anywhere and just assumes they left to go have fun in LA. But Drake and Josh are trying to figure out what to do next, and they get pulled over. Two guys get out of the car claiming to be the FBI and ask Drake and Josh to get out of their car. The FBI agents ask Drake and Josh to come with them back to headquarters to identify the men who assaulted them. Drake and Josh are about to get in the unmarked car, and the criminals are waiting for them in the back seat. The criminals steal the Geo back, then throw Drake and Josh in the back of their car, but not without a fight. And the criminals also steal Tony Hawk's car as well. Why the hell would they do this? It's a high-profile car that's just been hijacked. Wouldn't the police be tracking this? Wouldn't it be better to just leave it on the street and have them claim it as an abandoned car? Why would you want it to be tracked to your location? Why would they do this? During all this, Megan is still chilling at the hotel and finds the criminal's wallet on the floor with a random address in it. And she just doesn't really think that much of it. She just kind of puts it away and puts it in her back pocket and figures out what to do with it later. She really doesn't seem that concerned that a random man's wallet and a random address was in her trashed hotel room and that she can't find her brothers. It all seems pretty sus, Megan. I don't know. Cut to Drake and Josh being brought to set address by the criminals. The criminals force them into a building, and it looks like Reservoir Dogs, and Josh starts telling them he demands them to stop their criminal acts. So they lock Drake and Josh in a cage. Good going, Josh. Why were you hassling the criminals to stop their criminal acts? You really think that's gonna work? Meanwhile, Megan tries calling Drake and Josh, but she still can't get a hold of them. And Drake and Josh are locked in this cage for a while, not really knowing what to do. They even spoon a little bit, which Josh is the big spoon, and I'm a little surprised about that. Drake realizes his show is supposed to be in 15 hours, and they try peeking over the cage to see the men messing with some giant machine. The men plug the Geo into the machine and start it up, and it starts printing giant racks of $100 bills. Ooh, baby. Josh remembers seeing the story on the news at the airport, and they figure out that the Geo must have had files to let them print the money. Some of the criminals actually catch the boys snooping, and then the boys just try to play it off like they were just playing patty cake in their cage the entire time, and the criminals actually believe it. It actually works. I don't know, these are some stupid-ass criminals, I gotta be honest. They saw with their own eyes that Drake and Josh were peeking over the cage. It's the next day now, and Megan gets a wake-up call from the hotel. She realizes her brothers still aren't back, so she decides to call the limo service and head to the random address. Ballsy. Let's see what happens. The criminals are busy printing as much money as humanly possible while Drake and Josh break the lock on their cage. They find some weapons and prepare to run for it. They sneak up behind the two criminals blocking the door and slam them over the head with their weapons, and it doesn't even hurt them in the slightest. The criminals are rightfully pissed and throw the boys to the ground and tell them not to move. Josh asks for some food, and they actually throw a sandwich at his face. That's actually polite. They're not withholding food, they're not starving him, and they had a sandwich already prepared. That's pretty awesome. You know what? I can't take it anymore. Why in God's name does Josh care so much about turning these criminals in? All they are doing is printing money that doesn't hurt anyone, that literally money is a victimless crime, I guess, besides the government themselves. Why does Josh care so much about people printing money? Megan makes it to the address and tells the limo driver to wait out front for a little bit. Drake and Josh find a blade and they use it to break free from their restraints, and during this, Megan is investigating the building. She peeks into the building through a hole in the wall and sees the villainous acts unfolding with her brothers tied up on the floor. She calls the LAPD, which are useless. I can tell you firsthand that they're useless, and tells them to come to her address right away. Her phone breaks up and she loses service, so it's all up to her to save the day. The criminals have printed $500 million at this point and discuss what to do with Drake and Josh, and they decide to throw them deep in the ocean, I believe. Why not just print $1 billion at this point? You've already gone this far. You've already committed the crime. Why stop at $500 million? Megan finally sneaks into the building and Drake and Josh notice her just as they free themselves from their restraints. Megan's maneuvering around the building without being seen like a super spy, and she finds some electrical circuits. She turns on this industrial fan and causes a giant cash shower. The money is blowing absolutely everywhere, and as a kid, this was my favorite part. Let's get it. Let's go. Megan busts the switch so no one can turn it off, and the criminals are scrambling now. Drake and Josh try to run for it, but are forced to fight while Megan is grabbing as much cash as she can. The cops are rushing to them at this point, and Drake Tarzan swings into someone's face, and Josh uses a metal pipe to presumably kill someone. Megan's still just grabbing money as Drake and Josh fight for their lives. They keep messing around for a bit until they finally get the fan turned off, and things turn a little bit sour. At this point, the cops rush in and cuff everyone except Drake and Josh. How in God's name would they know Drake and Josh were not involved in this crime? Megan didn't give any information on the 911 call. She didn't even give a name or an address. How would they know not to cuff Drake and Josh and ask questions? How would they know that they weren't part of the criminal investigation? It makes no sense. The cops end up telling Drake and Josh that the man they met on the plane was an FBI top 10 most wanted, and Tony Hawk's manager shows up to the crime scene to get his car back. The cops literally showed up no less than 5 minutes ago. How in God's name did Tony Hawk's manager get an address and know to come here? And then how'd he drive here so fast? They live in LA. There's so much traffic. Tony Hawk's manager goes on to explain that Tony Hawk is actually chill with them stealing his car, and once he heard the explanation from the detective, he would have done the same thing. The cops literally just got there and are investigating for themselves for the very first time. Who explained to Tony Hawk's manager what happened, and how did he know? Megan said she's leaving to go to Denver and leaves the boys behind and hops in her limo. She actually pays the limo driver with dirty, fraudulent money, which is probably going to get him into deep water later on. That's a shame. Drake and Josh realize that Drake's performance is in 25 minutes and Sunset Studio is 45 minutes away. They end up getting to use Tony Hawk's car to drive there, and they give them a police escort as well. At that point, couldn't we have just let Tony Hawk take his car back and the police just take them to the studio? Instead of escorting them, why didn't the police just take them there? Meanwhile, at the studio, Drake's band is warming up while Drake races through the streets to get there in time. They're cutting it close and make it to the studio 1 minute before they go live. They're about to cancel the show, but Drake gets there literally seconds before it was canceled. They rush into the studio and Drake's thrusted onto the stage without any prep time at all. How'd he coordinate with his band which song to play? It was a major plot point that they needed to listen to the Geo to pick which song they would play. Drake never communicated with his band about this matter. In fact, how they even know to show up? They don't show him calling the band to tell them to show up. Drake ends up playing his heart out during this performance, and I'm here for it, but it low-key feels like it's a never-ending performance. It is a long, full-length song, and it kind of feels like it goes on forever. If you want to hear a banger song by Drake Bell, look up By the Ocean. Thank me later. During the performance, Josh actually ends up committing sexual assault against another man. And while you think this is a joke, look at what Josh did to that man and picture it happening to you, and decide if you would consider it assault or not, because I think I would. The performance goes perfectly, and the talent scout that originally gave Drake the job said if they could make it to New York, he could set him up with a potential record deal, which I wish the movie was 2 parts, and I wish they instantly flew to New York to go on this record deal adventure. Josh realizes he finally has a great adventure to write about, and the brothers share a bonding moment and an extremely brief hug. Don't they have this giant meme of, "How hug me, brother?" Why Why are they pretending like they have to hide the fact that they are hugging? That's weird. A few girls come over and fawn over Drake, and Drake actually introduces them to Josh, and they go out to explore the city together in Tony Hawk's car. When are they ever gonna give it back? When will evidence ever collect it? It took place in a crime! And the credits start to roll. Alright, let me start off by saying that this special is just as funny and entertaining as I remember it being when I was a kid. I wouldn't have cut anything out of the movie. In fact, I would have made it 10 minutes longer, which is a huge compliment. I do think it would have been a better ending if we got a short wrap-up with Drake and Josh's parents. I mean, Megan kept spending exuberant amounts of money on her parents' credit cards the entire film, so I was kind of waiting for a payoff to that joke, and it just never came. They even showed Megan drinking a ton of drinks from the minibar at the hotel, and later on, Drake winces at how expensive every drink was at the minibar, so I felt a little blue-balled we didn't get to see the parents' reaction to all that. But everything else I have to say about this special is positive through and through. The lack of a laugh track is actually a great choice in my opinion, and makes some of the jokes feel more awkward, but in a way that makes them even funnier. And the majority, if not all of the jokes, were pretty timeless. There weren't any general pop culture reference jokes or any timely jokes. They were funny because they were just funny, and that ages it really well. To be honest, Josh is actually treated like dirt throughout the entire film, and no one seems to care about him or his problems. When he's excited about getting into the writing program, he tells Megan, who drowns his voice out with a blender, his parents, who are so preoccupied with their cruise they can't even respond to him, and Drake, who just doesn't give a rat's ass. It made me kinda sad to see Josh be so emotionally alone during the special, but all of that empathy left my body as soon as Josh turned into a massive narc. He could have easily let the criminals take their Geo back in the hotel room, but he had to be a hero and steal the Geo back from them and try to turn them in, leading to both him and Drake getting captured, and if Megan didn't show up, presumably killed. Sure, it all worked out for them in the end, but things could have ended very differently. He should have just minded his own damn business and not put his brother's well-being at risk just for the sake of being a narc. I also found it hilarious that Drake and Josh chose to fly to LA instead of driving when it was only a 2-hour and 20-minute drive to LA from where they were, and it would have been cheaper and quicker, and they had a working car, and then they wouldn't have needed to steal Tony Hawk's car when they got to LA. So I guess Drake and Josh had to fly to LA so they had an excuse to have Tony Hawk's car get stolen. It all makes perfect sense now. And who can forget the final scene where they fight the criminals in a room full of money flying all over the place? This is the scene I instantly picture when I think of this movie, and it's still just as iconic to me today as it was to my little kid brain back in the day. After everything is said and done, I just had a really good time rewatching Drake and Josh Go Hollywood. It was fun from beginning to end, and I wish it went on for even longer. I was never bored, and I thoroughly enjoyed each and every scene. But let me know what you think down below. Was this one you remember watching as a kid, or have you not really enjoyed this one in the past? I really want to know. Go ahead, tell me, for real. Let's talk about it. If you made it this far into the video, why not consider subscribing? It would push me towards a better life, so maybe you could do it. All right, I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for listening.